Well, Michael's music I got to know, I've lost track of exactly how many years ago, but it's maybe like 5 or something that I've known him. In terms of new music in general, I mean, my father's actually a composer, so in a certain way, it was always a part of my sense of what music is that it's always being written all the time. And but I didn't really actively get involved in playing new music myself, because violin has such an incredibly rich tradition of both the violin playing and the repertoire, and there's so much to learn and develop that way. And my dad never pushed me particularly. So I started getting involved in doing, various collaborations and performances with other people doing that sort of thing, and getting to know more composers. And then I met Michael. He heard a performance of his piano trio that I played. He wasn't actually at the concert, but he heard the recording, and he responded very positively to it, and sent me a letter, thanking me for the performance. And then when he came to New York, we met up, and he started telling me about his violin pieces, the ones he had written so far. So I started looking into that, and that's kind of how it started with Michael. So it was kind of a time where I was just really getting much more deeply involved in working with composers. Just the music itself involves such a tremendous emotional commitment to every moment. It's such, it's very, very deeply serious music that he writes. It's just, that's what he chooses to write. It's not lighthearted, fun stuff, and it's always interesting to me because he's very lively and chatty and everything in person, but definitely in his art, that's what he wants to deal with and express. And so he goes kind of right to the bottom of the the heart of the matter, with some important issues, and his choice of text that he uses in association with his pieces. And I appreciate that. And then because of that, then I feel also, in terms of musical expression, you have to just give it completely all you have in the most sincere way, which appeals to me as a performer. And as a player, I've found that the technical challenges of his music are pretty unique in a lot of ways. Really interesting to deal with. There's so much, it's very powerful music, but there's also so much subtle detail. It's kind of almost paradoxical, I find. It has such force, but actually a lot of the expression also comes from these very minute details in the music. So it's not just like brute force. There's so much shaping involved in the music, and which takes a lot of control. So I found it very rewarding in terms of, new music to me is also about taking the instrument further. And besides all the techniques we've learned for playing the things like Mendelssohn and Tchaikovsky and whatever, but like, what else can we do to expand the range of expression? So I found it very satisfying to work on his music that way. And it's also been interesting to watch him perform and see how he kind of carries, because he has definitely his own language in his music too, so how he approaches them as a performer. Certainly I've worked with many composers who don't particularly perform, and it doesn't particularly affect how I'm, approaching it. But knowing how Michael performs and what his own particular type of virtuosity is, I think has given me some insight into the expression of his music. And I think his sort of coiled intensity when he's playing, and the way that kind of builds up and then explodes, and then the certain sort of ease that he has, but it's also very strong on the piano. I can see how some of his musical language is shaped by that, on whatever instrument. So it's good to know, and to know his playing somewhat, even though he does not perform that often, but I would say, well, just by the fact that it's there, having the text, it's going to evoke something in your imagination. And I sometimes, to me, it's more a matter of when I've read that bit of text, whether it's just a line, sometimes he has just a line, and sometimes it's much longer, but whatever sort of feeling it leaves me with just from reading it, I can often relate that to the music in some way. It's not very specific anything, and I might not even think about it very consciously, like, oh, this is expressing this, or the meaning of this poetry is this, therefore. It's just sort of emotionally how it colors your mood in reading it. I find then often speaks to the music also. And I would say, regard what he's saying, that now and then I do think, and I don't know whether he was consciously thinking about it, now and then I do feel like there is some rather specific thing in a programmatic way that I think is almost like a pictorial way that is in the music. Yeah, there are some things like, for instance, in The Wreckage of Flowers, the violin piano piece, and 14 pieces. Certain images to me, I feel like, there was one movement where he was talking about the boat of, Charon going across the river Styx, and the music definitely has this like rocking quality, and it seems rather descriptive to me. Or certain things where there's a particularly searing light, or these stark images, and it seems like certain moments in the movement are very sort of rather graphically showing those things. But I don't know, and I've never really discussed it with him, and I don't think he really wants to. And like I said, I don't know if he really thought about it very consciously. But I think these things all get kind of mixed up together, and composers use both their kind of more conscious minds and their much more subconscious ones, so there's no real answer to it. I mean, when I'm playing, I try to be just completely in the world of that piece. And because a lot of his music kind of goes to this rather kind of stark, often rather very sad place, yeah, I often find myself very just enveloped in that sort of state, and then it often has these outbursts that seem quite angry or violent. Something's trying to break out of this thing. Much of his music has this kind of pervasive kind of, yeah, darkness over it, and there's kind of a cloud there, and then the stormy moments, or even whole movements, that he'll have this tremendously turbulent movement. Or one of the pieces I'm playing tonight, it says cataclysmic, and it's just like fire and brimstone, and so it's just, but it's relentless, and so you just get completely enveloped in this state. But it's what's hard with his music, because a lot of pieces are built on contrasts of mood, and you have, whether it's within a movement or a piece, at those moments where gets very still, or very, dark and oppressed with, sadness or this and that, but then there's some kind of lift out of it, or a tremendous contrast between movements of a piece, or so in his music you really have to kind of, as you were saying earlier, really commit yourself to just delving into this thing, and that's why he deals with a lot of very tough subjects, whether it's, Holocaust experiences, or cancer, dealing with cancer, all, some of the the worst stuff ever, but I think that's why he just wants to, and it's not about like, well, we did that and now we're going to now we can do something. It's just like, just deal with it, So that's like I said, I appreciate that kind of commitment to just being in that state and just kind of confronting it and using the art to just, and that's why it's can be very cathartic for people, I think, that it's not always about, well, now here's a nice tune to make you feel better, but sometimes it's actually to deal with it and to make you really feel those things, and it doesn't overtly give you the uplift, but people feel kind of touched and like, okay, we went through this together and this is what's going on, So I think his music does that.